Every year, there's one artist who goes from complete obscurity to massive stardom. 2024's version of that is Chappell Roan. With massive hits like Hot to Go and Good Luck Babe, she's exploded into not becoming just one of the biggest artists in the world, but someone who is breaking records. As she performed at Lollapalooza in front of 110,000 people, setting a festival record, and she wasn't even headlining. Chappell is changing how we think about artists, but part of her appeal is her one-of-a-kind backstory. And because of this, there's already been a lot of controversy around her, as well as how she's approached fame.
That's not normal. People just skewing it. Not me.
From a Midwest small-town girl to a Hollywood superstar, this is the insane story of Chappell Roan. Chappell Roan, or Kaylee Rose Amstutz, born in Willard, Missouri. Willard, Missouri is the picture-perfect idea of a small Midwest town in America. Just listen to this clip of this Willard real estate agent trying to sell us on the city.
We're here on downtown Jackson Street, where we have historical buildings like the old Willard Bank that was robbed in 1908, or the Willard Hotel behind me, where Bonnie and Clyde once stayed. But don't worry, we learned our lesson.
Chappell, with her 3 siblings, lived in an actual trailer park in Willard. Her mother was a vet, and her father was a nurse in a neurological and burn-intensive care unit. Growing up in a conservative and Christian family, the concept of music was mainly focused on ways to praise the Lord, not to entertain. She went to church 3 times a week and spent summers at Christian camps. This was a life given to her, but deep down, she always knew she wanted to do something more.
Never quite felt like it was where I was meant to be. I didn't connect with a lot of people my age there, and I kind of still feel that way today.
And as a queer woman in a Midwest town in America, she always felt like she had to be someone she wasn't. Quote, "I had this part of me that wanted to escape so bad. I just wanted to scream." Kaylee's first introduction to music was when she was 12, when she started learning the piano. Over the years, she'd upload covers to YouTube, which got a lot of attention from major record labels, but nothing huge yet. Her dream was always to be an artist ever since she picked up the piano, but her beginnings as an artist got off to a rocky start. At the end of the day, Chappell was just a normal kid dealing with normal issues. So having to pursue this music career was a difficult thing to balance in her Midwest town. Not only was she forced to miss things like graduation and prom, but she also dealt with an undiagnosed bipolar 2 disorder. Things starting out weren't easy for her, as she self-describes it as, quote, messy. But in 2014, she turned 17 years old, and that's when things started to finally come together. She attended the Interlochen Center for the Arts in Michigan. This was her first real exposure to other creatives that were her age. Quote, "I never met creative kids before that camp. It changed my trajectory forever. I've never been with other songwriters before in my life that were in my age. Everyone was a fucking hippie, and I'm from Trump country. I'm from a heavily church background, and this is not that." During this trip, she wrote and recorded the song Die Young. This is arguably one of the most important moments of her career, but not for the way you think. A few months after releasing this song, she'd got reached out by a couple record labels, and it was just 6 months after releasing this song when Atlantic Records signed her to a 5-year contract. And if you know anything about Atlantic Records, you know this is a huge deal for no matter what kind of artist you are. This is a label that famously signed acts such as Bruno Mars, Don Toliver, Ed Sheeran, Cardi B, Charli XCX, Coldplay, Fred again, Lil Uzi, and many, many more. Signing a massive record deal is a pinnacle moment for a lot of artists. Some artists go their entire career without signing anything this big, and Chappell has done it at just the age of 17 while living with her parents in Missouri.
They announced it of the morning announcements at school. Congratulations to Kaylee Amstutz for getting signed to Atlantic Records, and also we're having peaches today on the side of our lunch. And I just had my head in my
And knowing where she is now, this seems like the beginning of a great partnership. But like many great stories, there are ups and downs, and this unfortunately isn't the fairy tale story that you'd expect. In the following years after signing her massive deal, things will start to heat up for Kaylee. She'd go on her first tour, opening with Vance Joy, officially creating the stage name Chappell Roan, in honor of her grandfather who had just passed away from brain cancer, Dennis K. Chappell, and his favorite song, The Strawberry Rowan. And along with this, she'd release her first song under a label, Good Hurt, as well as eventually releasing an accompanying EP, School Nights. She did this all while living with her parents in Missouri, and being supportive parents, they would fly her to and from Missouri and LA and New York York to keep this career going. But it wasn't until 2018 when she finally took the leap of faith and moved to LA out of her Midwest town. This was absolutely a huge pivotal moment for her, not just because she was moving locations, but this would change her whole perspective on herself. Not only would she be able to connect with more artists in person, but she'll also finally be able to, for the first time, live openly as a queer woman. Obviously, coming from a Christian conservative town, being queer, dressing in drag, and singing about sex doesn't exactly go over well. But while in LA, she would spend nights at the Abbey, a world-famous gay bar in West Hollywood. This again was another monumental moment for Chappell, as she was incredibly inspired by this expression of sexuality, a side she had never seen before. She even got as far as considering dropping music altogether to become a go-go dancer. But part of what makes Chappell's music so great is that she uses it as a way to express herself that her normal self wouldn't be able to do.
Singing about like a lot of sexual themes, a lot of gay stuff, like drinking. Like I want to like feel like this rebellious version of myself that I never got to be growing up.
Through music, she uses Chappell Roan as an alter ego to express herself in ways Kaylee Amstutz doesn't have the confidence to. Quote, "I feel allowed to be who I want to be here. That changed everything. Normally a reserved and quiet girl, Chappell Roan is the confident person she's always wanted to be. Moving to LA and being part of this new community made her music take a sharp turn in a new direction."
She created and released the single Pink Pony Club in 2020, a song directly inspired from spending nights at the Abbey in West Hollywood and experiencing the nightlife there. And if you listen to this song compared to her EP School Night, there's a huge change in sound, and it makes sense considering how her life has changed. And many Chappell Roan fans know this song, as it's one of her most popular songs right now at over 200,000 streams on Spotify and 14 million views on YouTube. But this isn't where her career takes off like you'd expect. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite.
The year is 2020, and the COVID-19 pandemic had just hit the US. Chappell is stuck writing songs in her West Hollywood apartment. She's making decent money touring with artists and doing random shows, but she's nowhere near made it yet. But in her new form inspiration for music, she'd go on and release songs like Love Me Anyway and California in May of 2020. She really is living most artists' dreams. She's being paid to write music and has found her new voice in what she really wants to talk about in her music. And if you listen to her music at this time, you can see a high increase in quality. It seems like she's on the verge of exploding and it's only up from here. However, her label didn't see it that way. Her 3 songs under her new label weren't getting the traction they seemingly deserved. But not every artist blows up that way. She obviously just needed time, but they saw the numbers and decided Chappell wasn't profitable enough to keep around, so Atlantic Records dropped her out of her contract 3 months after the release of California. To add to this, her boyfriend of 4 years broke up with her that same week, and a few months later, the producer who has helped her achieve her new sound had a big break with Olivia Rodrigo and departed to work with her. And if that wasn't enough, she was officially diagnosed with bipolar disorder within a few months. Everything really seemed to be crashing down for Chappell.
I mean, I thought that when I got signed, like, they make it seem like your dreams are all gonna come true. I was told that they were gonna put like a Grammy campaign behind like some of my music when I was 17. Like, they just like say shit.
She worked her way out of the Midwest and really discovered a new part of herself and poured it into her music. There's so many stories where that's the moment an artist makes it big, but Chappell's story didn't go that way.
I think this is in any industry, but especially the music industry. Like, when you get something really big, you think that you will arrive somewhere and be like, oh, I'm here, like, finally. And you're not.
Now single, labelless, and without a producer, Chappell is left picking up the pieces. She went back to Missouri, working in a coffee shop as well as nannying. Quote, "I felt stuck and like no one was paying attention to me. Dan, her producer, was just looking at me and goes, 'You are gonna run your career into the fucking ground if you don't start doing shit on your own.'" Chappell was at a crossroads. She could either use this moment as a sign to give up on music and pursue other things, or she could keep moving forward as an independent artist and bet on herself. Now back home, it was mixed feelings for Chappell. Obviously, it's hard to come back home after leaving, knowing it didn't exactly go the way you planned, but at the same time, she is free to create anything she wants. She's an independent artist. With that comes a lot of limitations, but as you can hear, her music fully benefited from it.
Like, I was sad before I got dropped. I was sad after I got dropped because I was like, am I gonna make it out of this? And it was sad. I did feel like a failure, but out of that failure, like, rebirthed a version of myself that like I felt like I could finally be.
While at home, Chappell was working at a coffee shop drive-thru while continuing to create music. Quote, I was working the drive-thru and I would just think of little song melodies and write them on my notes app. And that's the kind of how I kept the flame going. But inspiration could really only go so far back in her hometown. Some call it crazy, but I would call it persistence. Chappell would move back to LA in October to do it all over again, this time working as a production assistant just to pay the bills.
I moved back to LA in October of 2020 and I said I'm going to give it one more year. I'm going to give it one shot. If I don't like it by October 2021, I'll move back. But let me just try to give it a shot.
Quote, it felt like I needed to get out of Missouri to finish the rest of the songs that need to be written. I couldn't write pop songs when I was depressed on a farm. I just need to get out of there. Sometimes luck isn't what you need. It's just an unbreakable persistence. And for Chappell, her persistence was about to pay off.
It's so cliche, but if you just don't stop, you make it. Eventually.
Now back in LA, this time as an independent artist with no real expectations, Chappell was able to rekindle her relationship with her old producer, and in 2022, they teamed up to create her next song, Naked in Manhattan, her first release in 2 years, and her triumphant return to music. She'd followed the songs up with Femineminon and Casual, and despite not reaching massive success yet, Island Records likes what they hear and signs Chappell to a deal. And almost immediately, their investment on her will pay off to levels almost unimaginable. Chappell would go on to do her first headline tour, the Naked in North America tour, a camp-themed tour that opened each show with a drag queen performance. This is the first time the country really got to connect with Chappell, and her fan base started growing from it. Nothing huge yet, but things were bubbling. Later this year, she'd release songs like Kaleidoscope, Red Wine Supernova, and of course, Hot to Go. But surprisingly, she still hasn't had her prominent breakthrough yet. These songs are all out, and they're getting decent amount of streams, but what she does next is the perfect storm that makes her explode into a new level.
5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Chappell will see her career reach new levels after releasing her debut studio album, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, and having a subsequent tour. The tour started at Goldfield Trading Post in California, a modest 600-person venue. And while on this tour, she'd once again open for Olivia Rodrigo, this time for her Guts tour in February. This is when things went nuclear. After the first week on this Guts tour, her stream shot up 32%, a larger bump than the actual headliner, Olivia Rodrigo. The next month, Chappell would appear on NPR's Tiny Desk YouTube, quickly gaining millions of views, making it one of NPR's most viewed concerts this year, also beating out Olivia Rodrigo's own performance. In the next month of April, Chappell would perform at Coachella. This performance was massive for her. One of Roan's booking agents said, quote, Coachella was a paradigm shift. It's a zeitgeist moment. You can't manufacture it. And clips online went crazy viral. And be in mind that Chappell is touring while all this is going on. So her team is scrambling together to rebook venues as the demand for her tickets go crazy high. Starting at just a 600-person venue, they ended up selling 7,000-person venues easily. This same month, Chappell would release Good Luck Babe, and the timing couldn't have been better. This song was an instant smash hit, peaking at number 6 on the Billboard Top 100, and now it's on track to hit 1 billion streams. Chappell had the perfect mixture of great music, constant touring exposure, and internet virality. In June, she'd go viral for declining an invitation to perform at the White House Pride celebration, stating, "We want liberty, justice, and freedom for all. When you do that, that's when I'll come." And with this, presidential nominee Kamala Harris and VP Tim Walz even inspired their branding for their campaign from her merch. And this all seemed to come to an overwhelming climax during Lollapalooza. As a representative at Lollapalooza said about the performance, Chappell Roan's performance was the biggest daytime set we've ever seen, at around 110,000 people. And it's theorized to possibly be the biggest show ever at the festival. This is a festival that has acts such as Billie Eilish, Kendrick Lamar, Dua Lipa, Foo Fighters, and Post Malone, yet she drew the largest crowd. 2 months after this, her tour finally ends and she's left being one of the hottest artists in the world.
Chappell Roan is her name, yes. She's not just got one song, she's got like 7 fucking brilliant songs.
In just a matter of a few years, she went from a failed musician in the Midwest to one of the hardest tickets to get. But with sudden rise in fame, it's not always what it seems. With a sudden rise for any artist, there's always a ton of negative backlash, and Chappell is far from anything different. Being such a quick rise to fame, she's been very open and honest about her experiences with it, unafraid to openly talk about fans who cross the line, posting a video herself talking about the fan behavior.
It's weird how people think that you know a person just because you see them online or you listen to the art they make. That's fucking weird.
A lot of people try to claim this is her being ungrateful for her success and treating fans poorly, and along with this, at the 2024 VMAs, where she performed as well as won Best New Artist, she went viral for cursing at a photographer who told her to shut the fuck up.
Are you bad? You don't get to yell at me like that.
And most recently, she's received a lot of hate for saying both political parties both have problems on both sides. It's gotten to a point where people are making memes about how they're afraid of what she's going to say next. But to be honest, she's still young and she's still just a Midwest kid living this crazy life. Being thrusted into fame and having millions of people critique every one of your words is honestly something that most people, including myself, will never understand. But with what comes with this level of fame comes a crazy fan base, both good and bad. Some people argue it's what she asked for, but she's just an artist who wanted to release music. Becoming famous is just a byproduct of success. With her meteoric rise to seemingly a nobody to one of the biggest artists in the world, there is naturally a lot of industry plant accusations that really couldn't be farther from the truth. She had no connections. Her family is a middle class, at best, Midwest family living hundreds of miles away from LA or New York. She was found through YouTube, and she'd already been signed to a label and they couldn't get her sold, and she was dropped by them. His story has way too many ups and downs to be a true industry plant, and I think it kind of discounts the amount of persistence it took from her to get this big. Midwest small town artists don't usually make it, but she believed in her own talent, and once she found that style that spoke to her, and as soon as she started making it for what she believed, everything changed. If it's one thing you should take from this story, it's that you shouldn't let failures be the end of your story. Some people could have seen getting signed and dropped early on in your life is a absolute failure, but it's the best thing that happened to her. It forced her to reflect and recreate her own sound, and she became way better off because of it. For every Atlantic Records, there's an Island Records in your story. For every School Nights EP, there's a Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess album in your story. Nobody's story is a linear progression up, and if you're facing any hardship in your story, or someone is telling you that you're not good enough, it's just one part of your story, but it's not the ending.